It's time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the Property Podcast. It is episode 73. I'm Rob B. With me is Rob D. Hey Rob, how are you today?
I am very well indeed, thank you. It's very nice and sunny here in Prague, and I understand it's been pretty roasting over in London as well.
Yeah, we've had a summer. Incredible. So normally you run away to escape to get some sunshine, but you could have had it here in old Blighty, Rob.
I could have done. But never mind. We've both had the sun. We've both been very busy, as you'll find out very shortly. And this week we're going to be talking about how to get the best from your letting agent. So we've talked about self-managing in the past, but if you go down the letting agent route, how do you make sure that's a good relationship? That's what we're going to cover today.
We are. So it's built on those relationships, getting the best out of them, and therefore your portfolio will run that much smoother. Before we get going, it's not just an episode full of great content, which we hope will deliver, but also it's a special day for us, Rob, isn't it? Because it's our launch day. Now, we've been talking about yellow lettings on the podcast for, well, at least 6 months, and we were working on it for, a good few months before that. So it's probably not far off a year in the making, that's for sure. So to be able to say we're launching yellow lettings today. So as you download this today, if you download it on day one, the Thursday, so it's Thursday the 8th, Thursday the 8th of August, yellow lettings has gone live and we're now accepting properties. Cue big applause, effect, dramatic noise now.
Slightly underwhelming as always. But yeah, it is a really big day for us. And yeah, it's been a long time in the making. And the last few months in particular, things have really stepped up a gear. We've been working on all our processes. We've been doing all the paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork. Bringing our first member of staff on board. And it's been a real process. We're talking about letting agents today. I've got a whole lot more respect for agents now. We really realise in depth everything that's involved. But so far, we've been managing a small number of properties. Everything's been going pretty well on the whole. Our early group of beta testers have been very patient with us while we work out some of the kinks. As of today, we're ready to say, okay, let's take on your properties.
Yeah, let's do it. So we are ready. So if you have registered interest before, don't worry, you'll be getting contacted pretty much over the next 7 days. If you haven't registered yet, you've been holding off and you want to say, let's chat, let's talk, let's find out more, then go to yellowlettings.net. You're on the front page. It'll be very obvious what you need to do, but go to yellowlettings.net and just say hi, register your interest, and we'll be in touch.
This isn't the place to get into a sales pitch, but when you get on there, you'll be able to see the pricing and what we're offering for that pricing. And I think it's really competitive, to be honest. And we're being very upfront with it. So it's not one of these things where you have to wait for someone to get on the phone and have them come round your house and give them a cup of tea and all this stuff before they'll tell you what the price is. It's all right there on the website and you'll be able to see what we've put together for you. But I'm really excited about it. I think we're offering something really great. We're offering something new and hopefully you'll want to get on board with us.
Yeah. As Rob said, you go to the website for the details, but we're certainly competitive. But more than that, because it's not just getting a good price, more than that, I believe we're going to deliver the best product out there. Now, that's a big claim and time will tell. But the reason why it's taken so long to set up and we just haven't thrown a website up and say, hey, let's manage your properties, is we've wanted to get it right. It's something that Rob and I, hopefully it comes across that when we launch something, we like to do it well. And the Yellow Lettings is our biggest project to date, and we're very proud of it, and we're very proud of the product that we're going to be able to deliver to you. So we hope the website gets that across, but when you contact us, we'll be able to tell you in a lot more detail too. But we want to deliver loads of value in the podcast too. Rather than us talk about yellow lettings for 20 minutes, we're going to talk about a subject that you can learn from and use, whether you use yellow lettings or any letting agent out there. It's how to get the best from your letting agent. And we've got Dale to thank for this, Rob, because Dale, who's one of our new guys at RMP Property, he's the client services manager there. He was very kind because we've been busy with setting up Yellow to help put some of these notes together. So cheers to Dale.
Yeah, he's done a brilliant job. So we had our own thoughts and he's added to those. And it's an important topic because we've talked many times before about how a letting agent can really make or break your property portfolio. They can be absolutely brilliant, I mean you never have to worry about anything and the money just hits your bank account, or they can cause you more problems than you would have had if you'd just done it on your own. And the thing that people tend to forget is that although you've got an agent looking after things day to day, if they screw up, then you're legally on the hook for it. So it can go very wrong. And so it's like, okay, well, how do we avoid things going wrong? And how do you make sure that you've got a good relationship? So we've got a load of tips. Some of them are about how to choose a letting agent in the first place. And the majority of them are about how, after the relationship has started, how to make sure it's working out for you. So Rob, do you want to kick us off with the first one?
Yeah. So the first one is meet your agent. So by meeting them, you become a person rather than just a number, someone who ends up on our CRM system. Not only does this help build rapport with the agent, but it puts a face to a name. So make sure the agent doesn't think, you're never going to visit again. You're not one of these landlords that will just send something across and that's the end of it. Make sure you visit if you can. Now, you may be thinking, oh, wait there, I'm overseas, or how do I meet my agent? Well, with Yellow Lettings, Rob and I are clearly very accessible. We've got the hub, we've got the podcast, and then we have all our meetups throughout the year. And we're going to be bringing, like I've brought people from the RMP team along before, we're both going to be bringing our Yellow team along with us. So Lynn will be joining us at one of our Northern meetups in the future. And I think it's a much more pleasant environment to build rapport and meet people in the Property Podcast meetups, because it's just informal, it's laid back, it's unpretentious. I was going to say unprofessional, Rob, but not unprofessional, but certainly uncorporate. It's a nicer way, I feel, to build those relationships. So yeah, meeting the people you're going to work with, or certainly engaging with them, is a really good thing to do. But Rob, as I said, there will be people overseas, so they're not always going to be able to meet face to face, are they?
Yeah, exactly. It's not always going to be possible to meet in person. And it is something that's concerned me in the past, because I spread my portfolio around a bit, as you do as well. And so it makes me worry that if I've just got one or two properties, I'm never going to get the same level of commitment as someone who's got 50 in the local area or whatever. And that's particularly a problem for me if there are long stretches of time when I can't actually go and meet them. But Dale had a really good tip, which is add your property manager on LinkedIn. He said that this has the same effect of making the relationship a little bit more personal. If you kind of pop up every so often in their inbox or in their feed or something, it's just a kind of a subconscious reminder that you're there. So LinkedIn is the professional way to do it. One of the agents who manages my properties, I'm friends with on Facebook, which you could argue is kind of crossing a line, but I sort of get to see what he's up to and he gets to see what I'm up to. And even if we don't speak for months on end, we're kind of aware of each other's existence on a day-to-day basis. He's not yet aware that, of course, I'm going to be moving that to Yellow, but that's a whole other issue. Ideally meet, but if you can't meet, then there are so many tools available where you can just kind of have a sort of a low-level relationship all the time and make sure that you don't get overlooked.
Yeah, Rob and I are on Twitter, for example, so we're easy to find and easy to follow. So it's at Rob Bents or at Rob Dix. It's very easy to engage with people on Twitter. You don't have to be followed back. LinkedIn, it's a bit difficult because I know Rob and I get several requests a day. So you can imagine how that builds up over a week. And you never know with LinkedIn who people are unless they leave a message to say, hi, I'm connecting because of this reason, which most people don't. They could be spammers. They could be anything. So I'll normally try and engage with people before I add them to LinkedIn, not because I'm, trying to be some super selective guy, but I used to say yes to people and then suddenly 5 seconds later after saying yes, you get an email pitch, an advert sent through, trying to make contact, selling you their goods. I was like, oof. But Twitter's a really nice informal way of doing it as well. Okay, so another one is keep in touch. Call them fairly regularly, but not too regularly. The agent won't be always free to speak to you, but they should be able always to get back to you. But there's no harm in calling just to check everything's in order, and that helps rapport. So if you want to call in, say once a month, just to check in, how's it going? Probably wouldn't be a lot to report if you've got a good property in a good area that's being managed well. But, if you just want to do it for a rapport's sake, calling in once a month just to say, hey, there's no harm to it. 5 minutes once a month is not going to be a big burden on your time. And that could be an easy way for you to build a relationship and just keep you front of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's step back for a moment and talk about choosing the agent in the first place. Or if you're already with an agent and you don't know much about them because you haven't been in touch, you've been very hands-off, check that they're investors too. We say this for all members of your property team. If they are investors themselves, then they know what it's like for you. They'll be able to put themselves in your shoes and serve you better as a result, because they'll know what your priorities are in terms of your cash flow, in terms of where you want to be. They'll just get the whole picture. If they've just read up on it, or if they know some property investors, but really for them it's just a job, they're just not going to be able to do their job in the same way. So obviously not every member in the branch is going to be an investor. There are going to be people who are just not interested. There are going to be people who are too young. But if the people who are actually running the show, and of course you want to have some contact with the people running the show, if they are actually investors themselves, that's a good test of whether they're going to be able to do a good job for you. Make sure you ask that when you're taking an agent on in the first place. And if you don't know whether your current agent is an investor in property or not, then start using some of the methods we've talked about. Actually have a conversation with them and see, because if they are, you might be able to build a better bond with them that way, and they might be able to give you some really good advice. If they're not, that might be the sign that you want to start looking elsewhere.
Exactly. And next up is be knowledgeable. Yes, you want your agent to be knowledgeable. That goes without saying. But also you want to be knowledgeable yourself. Visit your property every couple of years and take pictures. So, I'm not saying go every week or every year, but every couple of years, go and take photos. I'm guilty. I don't do this one. Hands up. But you can do it. And then you will become more knowledgeable of that individual property. As your portfolio grows, though, that, of course, will become more difficult. If the agents think you don't have a clue about maintenance or any issues, they may start to take what's a nice word I can fill in here, Rob?
The Michael?
The Michael. They may start to take the Michael out of you in terms of furniture costs, maintenance costs, so on. Now, of course, Yellow Lettings is a fine upstanding agent, and I'm sure most other agents are too. But there are agents out there that will take the Michael when they quote you. It's easy, though, to get around it. I had a boiler replaced earlier this year. I just called somebody who I know is in a similar trade but wasn't in that area. They told me what it roughly should be. I was within 10% of that price, so I was happy. I didn't and still don't know a lot about boilers. I know enough. But I spoke to an expert who could help me to guide me on the pricing, and then I knew where I stood. Try and become knowledgeable. It doesn't mean you don't have to start reading DIY books. That's the last thing I'm going to be doing. But if you do know a bit, it helps. And if you don't know a bit, speak to people who do.
Yeah, exactly. It's that trade-off, isn't it? You don't want to, keep a dog and bark yourself. Is that what they say? I don't know. Something like that. But you don't want to have an agent and then spend your whole time kind of doing the job yourself anyway, just in case the agent isn't doing it right. It's that balance. If you visit every couple of years and you just have some kind of low-level knowledge of what's going on, it means that you're not going to have an agent abusing the fact that you're never there, but you're not going to have to be rocking up every week either. Following on from that is reviewing your own rent. So every year, hopefully, the rent should go up. A good agent should review the rent annually. Sometimes it might go up by more than that, or sometimes you might think that you want to put up the rent, but in fact the local market has softened. If you do that, you're going to have potentially longer void periods because the market won't bear that price anymore. You're really going to be wanting to look at the rent annually at least, but an agent can just get into the habit of sort of chucking an extra £10 on it every year because they know that it'll keep you happy because you can see the rent going up and it's the easy thing to do. Maybe they won't do anything at all. 5 years will go by and your tenants are getting an absolute bargain and you have no idea. So again, this isn't a difficult thing to do. Just set yourself a reminder for once a year to go onto Rightmove and see what the rents in your area are like. Put a reminder in Google Calendar for a year's time. That's what I do. And just have to pop onto Rightmove. You don't have to leave your desk and just have a look. You'll be able to get an idea from the location and from the photos what comparable properties are going for. And you'll know whether you're in the right ballpark or not. And if you've got any concerns, you can raise them with your agent. They might have a very good reason why, in fact, your level of rent is as it is. And if they do, that's absolutely fine. They're the local experts. But it might be that they've just been slacking a little bit. So it's worth keeping an eye on.
It is. And to be fair, you don't need to encourage me to go on Rightmove. Any excuse.
Any excuse.
And I'm on there. Okay. So next up, this is important. And actually, landlords often get a lot of criticism for not doing this. And it's be prepared to spend money when required. Okay. Questioning costs is acceptable, but nothing is more detrimental to your relationship with your property manager and your tenant than refusing to spend money when it's required. And this is where a lot of anger to landlords happens, where landlords will go, oh, well, the heater needs replacing, but let them see out the tenancy. It's only 3 months left, and I'll sort it after that. And it's the middle of January. I'm being extreme, but these things happen, or leaving them without a washing machine for 2 months, or keep repairing it rather than replacing it, and it breaks regularly. It's a false economy as well doing that. I know the listeners of the Property Podcast wouldn't fall into that bracket, but it does go on. It does happen. And it's really just a really poor way to run your portfolio. It's short-term thinking. It's going to pay off your property manager. It's going to pay off your tenants. And it's going to just end up in a losing situation. You're going to lose a lot more than the few pounds you think you're saving.
Yeah, from an agent's point of view, it's really tough because you are effectively a middleman between two parties who can have very opposing interests. And from the agent's point of view, you just have to try and hope that everyone's being realistic. The tenant realizes that every time there's a slight mark on the carpet, the whole thing isn't going to get replaced with something really luxurious. And the landlord needs to realize that they need to keep things in a good state of repair. When you have to spend weeks on end trying to persuade your landlord to replace something really fundamental while your tenant phones up every day complaining about it, that's when things start to go wrong, and you're not going to have a good relationship with your agent or your tenant if that's your attitude. But, so far from the properties that we've been managing, we've not had that problem at all from our landlord. So obviously podcast listeners are an enlightened bunch, but yeah, you do need to be able to spend money when required. And again, that's why we talk about the importance of doing realistic calculations when you're buying a property in the first place, so you can actually afford to put money aside for repairs when they do inevitably happen. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of, as a landlord, doing your job properly. And in this case, even if your only job is replying to an email and saying, yes, that's fine to spend that money. But what if the agent isn't doing their job? What if you've done everything that you can do and you're still not getting anything from them at all? Because, as we said before, letting agents are pretty much completely unregulated, and you can get some real shockers. So if you've done the right thing, you've done everything you could reasonably do, and you're not getting anywhere, what can you do? Well, be vocal is the answer to that. In this case, the answer is not just being vocal by calling them all the time, or that might be a good idea as well, but also by doing it on social media. Twitter has basically become a customer service channel in lots of ways. Like, you see people constantly complaining to their airlines on there and their banks and that kind of thing. But the reason why people do it is because it works. Because most companies, however useless they are aware that it's important to keep customers happy. And when they see that that customer is influencing potentially thousands of other customers, then they know it's time to act. So you'll often find that you can have emails get ignored, you could have phone calls get ignored, but then you send a tweet or something and all of a sudden something gets fixed. Agents are going to move much more quickly to keep you happy if they think that it's not just you, but potentially a lot of other people who are going to be aware of this as well. So it's not something to do straight away. It's not like your rent is one day late and suddenly you're kicking off and like starting a campaign on Facebook or something. It is an avenue that's there for you if you've done everything that you can and you just don't think you're going to get anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And did I say we were on Twitter, Rob?
You did say that we were on Twitter.
Oh. Maybe we're not. No, of course, we are happy to be on Twitter because we are very, very happy and confident in the service we deliver and will deliver. So we're there and we're accessible if you need us. But clearly, there are multiple channels that we'll offer that will never lead to that. But it's good if you can find a way to get in touch with your letting agent that's beyond just the normal channels. Before it gets to that point, a really simple tool, and probably the easiest tools you can use, and it goes without saying, but sometimes the simple things are overlooked. It's just being nice. And that's probably the most important thing. If you're nice and respectful to your agent, they're more likely to see your property in a positive manner. And if you're rude to them, they're more likely to not act in your best interest. Little things like sending them a Christmas card can make, a big difference in the relationship, just things like that. But just being nice and pleasant is probably enough anyway. I know that sounds like a really weird one to say, but, in many aspects of life, business and property is a business. People just fail to do the simple things. And just doing that alone will probably, if your agent is any good or has the intention of being good, will probably work hugely in your favour. And that really relates back to the podcast, Rob, that we did with Peter Shankman. About being nice in business. We've done a whole podcast on that, and he's a really great guy. He's a really interesting guy. I'll give you an example. So he doesn't just, preach it. He practices it. There's a conference in a business forum that Rob and I are going to, and he posted in the forum to say, I'm landing at this time. I've got a driver arranged. Does anybody need a lift? I know I'm kind of going off tangent here, but go back and listen to that podcast because he talks about being nice, but he actually is really nice. So that's a really good podcast to go and listen to about the power of nice. But it works in all aspects, and with letting agents too.
Yep, the propertyhub.net/Shankman is the URL to get to that one if you want to have a listen, back in episode 50-something. But sometimes, however nice you are and however much you've followed all this advice and you've done the right thing and you've been diligent, things aren't going to get any better. And if you're not happy with your agent, then you can always move. So this is our final tip. You can always move. If nothing else, threatening to move in the first place is a good way of getting people's attention. So if you're working with a big agent, like a national chain or something, you can often get into the situation where your property is being looked after by someone pretty junior and someone who doesn't have much training at all. And they'll kind of try to blag their way through anything that comes up. And however much you try, they just don't have the ability to put things right. And if you actually threaten to move, then senior management might start taking a bit more of an interest in you because they see that they're going to be hit in the pocket if you leave. So that can be a way of actually getting issues resolved, because the thing that the office junior has been trying to sort out for the last 2 months, suddenly someone who knows what they're doing steps in and sorts it out in a week. Of course, you don't want to be threatening to move at every little hiccup. That is a really good way to pee off your agent if you're the kind of person who throws their toys out of the pram every time the slightest thing goes wrong. But if something's serious, then do threaten to move and be prepared to follow through with it as well, because there is not a shortage of letting agents. Wherever your property is, you are going to have a choice. However much they might try and tell you otherwise, if they try and sort of bluff about the contract or whatever, make sure you look at the contract and make sure that you get advice from other people as well to find out what the truth of the matter is, because you're probably going to find out that switching is a lot easier than you think. And it really bugs me. It's like the opposite of what we talked about with Peter Shankman, where you kind of have customers because you're nice and because you have this really great relationship. It bugs me with estate agents when you have customers staying because they feel like there's no choice. That just really irritates me. Like, you get so many agents who do a really poor job and they manage to survive because their customers feel like they don't have any other options, or they feel like they can't leave and they're tied into something. It's not the case. You can always move. So we've given you lots of tips for how to get the best out of your agent, but sometimes you do everything you can and your agent just isn't up to scratch. So if that happens, just move on.
To yellowlettings.net. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So that's almost all content, Rob, and there was 1 second pitch. That's how to get the best from your letting agent. Resource of the week this week is brilliant, not for everyone, but if you own a website, this is an absolutely top drawer resource. If you have a website of any description, you can take advantage of it. And it's called Quill Analytics. Now, it's been put together by Narrative Science, but what it does is, I'll keep it brief because I know not everyone's got a website, but if you have got a website, a real pain point is you go to Google Analytics, you can see some basic info, but it's a nightmare to interpret. You know, there's numbers all over the place. What's important, what isn't? What Narrative Science and their app called Quill does for you is it takes all that data and then it gives you a monthly digest, and I believe you can do weekly too, but I just set it for monthly. It gives you a monthly digest of everything that's gone on that's important. It writes it out in a report for you, so it's a lot easier to understand. And it's free. It's absolutely brilliant. We'll link to it in the show notes. If you go to the propertyhub.net/agents, all this content we've talked about will be there, including this resource. It's a fantastic tool, and I can't believe it's free.
Yeah, it is brilliant. It's just one of those things. When you showed it to me earlier, Rob, it's just like, oh yeah, how does this not exist already? Analytics seem like such a complicated thing. So if you've got a website and it's a key driver of your business, you're probably looking in your analytics all the time. But if it's just something a bit more occasional, you might never look at it. But this just makes it so easy. You don't have to make any effort at all. If you don't have a website, I'm sorry, this resource of the week isn't the most helpful for you, but we'll have another one for you next week. If you do, I think you're going to really get a lot out of this.
Yeah, you'll have to forgive us because for those who do have a website, it's gold. Next week, Rob, we've got 7 ways to stay on top of the property market. And this one comes courtesy of a suggestion from Property Hub member Chris Ryder. Hi, Chris. Chris has sent a few suggestions across, and this is one we thought, this is going to be really good. This is going to be really useful. So there's plenty of info out there. There's plenty of changes going on in the market. But how can you stay on top of what's happening? We'll give you the down low on how we do it next week. But of course, before we finish, Rob, I think there's something we were meant to mention today. Something's launching.
Yellow Lettings. Yellow Lettings is launching today. I knew there was something we should have mentioned at the start of the show. So do go to yellowlettings.net if you'd like to get involved with that. We'd love to see you over there.
Yeah, or if you just want to see a new website and be nosy, feel free. Thank you to everyone for listening again. We really do appreciate it. We'll be back next week. If you have any suggestions for a show, then please do let us know. Next week's is come from a listener. So do let us know in the propertyhub.net. There's a place there to leave your suggestions on podcast episodes. We will do the majority of them, so feel free to pass on your suggestions there. But until next week, thank you very much for listening.
Whoa, stop right there. We forgot to mention something. We forgot to mention we're only a couple of weeks away from this point from the Property Hub meetup as well. So propertyhub.net/meetup if you haven't got your ticket left. A lot of people have this week. I need to actually start checking on the capacity of the venue because I didn't think of that. But if you haven't got your ticket yet, now would be a great time to do it. propertyhub.net/meetup. We'd love to see you there as well. Okay, that really is us done now. So we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.